I call it heart armor. We start to build armor around our hearts because when we were wide open and vulnerable and innocent like a child, things happen and we feel it got stomped on. So we start to build this protection, and then we show up as a version of ourselves, right? And we grow up and try to unpack all of that just to find that we were the divine perfection we were when we first took our first breath.
Welcome back to another episode on Find Joy with Joyan, the podcast that is all about helping you live and lead a life with joy. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we are giving you access to the world's best and brightest minds in their fields on our show. Listen in as these leaders impart their wisdom, inspiration, and stories to empower you to live joyfully with intention, passion, and purpose, and celebrate the struggles and overcome the challenges we may face each day with the tools and insights that we are going to share with you. Whether you are looking to improve your relationship, find your passion, learn how to embrace the present moment, deepen your spiritual connection, or learn the magic of manifestation and law of attraction to attract more abundance, this podcast is here to guide you every step of the way. As your host, I am also challenging myself to dig deeper to learn and unlearn and ride along with you. We are not here to tell you how to live your life because it is your life. But this life is all that we have right now. So my friend, why not live our life to the fullest? So I hope these conversations and stories will guide and inspire you to live your life to your highest potential and a life that you are proud of as you continue to grow and evolve in your own journey. So if you are ready to start living a more passionate, purposeful, and joyful life, join us every Wednesday on Find Joy with Joyan for inspirational stories, powerful message, fun conversations, and empowering thoughts with me and my special guests and friends. And now, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Joining us today is a beautiful soul who is fueled by a passionate love for humanity and a burning desire to end suffering. She is driven to discover the truth of her client's deepest potential and unlock the limitless opportunity that leave others in the dark ages as she has done it for herself. For the past 18 years of being a peak performance coach and life strategist, she has coached thousands of high-performance people from all walks of life and various parts of the world that have achieved success and the highest level of fulfillment. Out of the top 120 coaches on the planet, she ranked either number one or top 3 in every measurable category while working with the top coaching company in the world. She's here today to empower you to transform your life from pain or trauma into purpose and passion, what she refers to as fierce grace. So guys, help me in welcoming the passionate, powerful, the truly inspiring, the superhero of her life, Jessie Torries. This episode is sponsored by Get the Law of Attraction. If you have been listening to this podcast, you will know that I am a big believer of the universe and the law of attraction. Get the Law of Attraction is a spiritual and inspirational company that gives you something really good like chocolate chip cookies to feed your soul and your mind every single day. They provide daily Instagram posts and reels on the universe, gratitude, spirituality for your headache life. They also have an educational course on the Law of Attraction and Gratitude Journal, and their links are in the show note below. Go to their website and use promo code Joyan, Joyan, when you sign up to get $25 off. Hi, Jessie. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much, Joyan. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's my honor to have you as my guest today. So I really want to talk about, start with you. The first place that I will start with you is your journey, your story, because I'm always curious to find out, to know why people do what they do today. So if you don't mind, share with me and my listeners, talk about your journey, your story, and how it led you to do the work that you are doing today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting story. And I guess I want to start my story first with acknowledging that as you hear my journey, that I I come from a complete place of love and forgiveness and care for all the people in my journey, my father and my ex-husband. And this by no means is a setup to villainize them. This is just my journey, and I am grateful for every part of it. So it isn't a victim story. It's a story of a little girl that was victimized by her father. I was sexually abused by my father from my first memory. And I tried to tell my mom when I was 16 and in Spanish. My family is from Peru. And, my father twisted my words. I used the word molest, and molestar in Spanish means to bother or annoy. So he kind of twisted my words. My mom believed it. I never heard another word about it. And then for the next 2 years, I proceeded to keep running from him. And I met this man, and when I turned 18, I started to rebel, right? I was like, you know what time do you want me home? Midnight? Okay, cool. I'll be home at 2. I was like, I'm 18. You can't tell me what to do now. My mom would stand crying in the kitchen, and I just looked at her, and she was asking me, why are you doing this? And I didn't have an answer, but I also had this puzzled look on my face, like, how could you ask me that question? When I went out with this gentleman, he brought me home late, and my dad was standing outside on the porch. And my dad looked at him and said, you get out. He looked at me, you get in the house, and proceeded to berate me throughout the night. But then the next day, my then boyfriend said, what's up with your dad? And I said, what do you mean? He was mad because you brought me home late. And he said, no, that was not an angry father. That was a jealous man. And when he said those words, it opened up Pandora's box in me. And I probably cried and shared for 2 hours, more than he probably needed to hear. But in that moment he was the first one that ever, like, nobody had ever said, like, I tried to tell my mom I was shut down. And my father, the way he handled, if I fought him off in any way, is he punished my mom and my brother, not me. So as a little girl, I felt responsible. When there was upset at the home, it was my fault, right? If he got his way, then there was Peruvian music playing, and there was just, what do you want for breakfast? What do you want for? And it was just a beautiful day, right, in the house. And so I took that as my responsibility. So when this gentleman said all that, and I told him everything, and he still wanted to be with me, I was like, you mean you still like me with, like, all my dirty? Now you know my mess. I was convinced no one would ever love me. I thought I was filthy and gross, and no one would ever want to touch me. And when he loved me anyway, I fell madly in love. And I was like, oh my God, I just wanted to be with him. And in that, I decided to move. I wanted to move in with him, and I told my mom, and my mom is of Catholic faith, which is, all good, no problem with that. However, from her perspective, her daughter was not going to live with a man and not be married. So I moved out Monday. I was married Friday. Yeah. And so at 18 and 21, we were 2 young kids who, thought he came from a very abusive background. His mother was an alcoholic. He was the youngest of 4, the only boy. He would come home and find his sisters unconscious on the floor, and so he had his trauma, and we felt like our souls connected. And he thought, my kids will never let me, see me drunk. And I thought, my kids will never be molested. And we thought we fixed it. Right. And so we enter this marriage, and we dreamed about the white picket fence, the dog, and the kids. And for the most part, we created that. We really did. We were just 2 young kids madly in love. But what happened in the context of our marriage is his method of communication with his mother was vulgarity and yelling. I mean, when he was 13, his mom threw a wrought iron skillet at his head. This was the life he led. And so when things were disruptive at home, that's the way he communicated. And for me, it just shut me down. And, and it with emotional, verbal, and mental, constant abuse, I got to a place where I was just apathetic. And the only reason I didn't take my own life is because of my children. And because I just didn't see any way out. I didn't believe that there could be another life. Divorce was not an option from my perspective. And the only way out was death. And so in the context of our marriage, we also had 2 years that were filled with death, that like extraordinary deaths. Like he had an uncle that was six and a half, worked on the Puget Sound, walked on the shipyard, and those big iron balls with the hooks on them fell on his head. Like he was just under it at the right time. It broke and it fell on his head, just a freak accident. My then husband's, his partner in LAPD, he came home from work, put on a John Wayne movie, and had an aneurysm and died. He was 38 years old. He left a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And, and then we got that horrible knock on the door where 2 police officers came to our house, and his sister had committed suicide. And then a year later, my brother was murdered. And so we had these 4 massive like trauma in the marriage on top of that. So there was just a lot that was just, we were trying to make this thing work. But when the more stress there was, the more heightened the anger and the rage, and the more I went inward, and it was just a bad deal. And when I finally got to that place, what woke me up was an act of kindness, which is why right now when I talk to people, they feel helpless to help the world and what's happening in the world. I'm like, you're not helpless. Your act of kindness can change the trajectory of someone's life like it did mine. I took a course, and these people, and there's a story behind it, but these people that I took this course with, I created a video montage, and I had become it was an emergency medicine course. So I became the patient because I actually flunked the class because my husband broke his leg and I had to be there for him and whatever. And the teacher offered me the opportunity to audit the class and take the class next semester, and I would just get an incomplete, not a fail. I took it. And so I became the patient. So half the class is lecture, half the class is scenarios. And so they were doing mock 911 calls. And so I was placed under cars and stairwells, and they were pulling leaves out of my hair and saying, "Thank you so much, you're helping us." And I was so introverted and so like, but what I knew is when they pulled together and put money in a jar and got me a Best Buy card, which seems like, so simple, just a gift card. But to me, it short-circuited me. What do you mean you're giving me this and you want nothing in return, right? My father had taught me that. He used to tell me, people want to slip something in your drink. People want to take advantage of you. So you be careful, right? Because that's what he was doing. My ex-husband told me, people subconsciously want to break up a good thing, Jess. So don't talk about our marriage to anybody. Right. So I was just like, oh, so from my perspective, everyone was out to take advantage. When these people did this small little thing, I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know to call it kindness. All I knew is that if there was a light in me that was still a little flicker, it ignited it. And I thought, I don't know what this is, but if this feeling is available, then life is worth living. And that gave me the courage to get out of my marriage and start my life over. And I was 38 years old back then, and I had no clue who I was. No clue. I'm like, I don't even know what my favorite color is, because I lived my life being what I thought I needed to be in order to make him happy and for me to be accepted. And so I was clueless and I was scared of everything. So what it did is it created an insatiable hunger to understand humanity, understand human beings. And so I would never read before. I'd pick up books. I start reading, and God bless authors. Thank you for taking the time to write, because just opening that up gave me a different perspective. It gave me a belief that life could be different than what I had imagined. And I went to workshops, seminars. I was going to therapy. I was just anything that I could do to try to understand. And then that led me to being a coach. And, this is back when coaching wasn't as big a deal, right? It was like my therapist said, you should be a coach. And I'm like, you mean soccer coach? Like I didn't even understand, right? And then I looked it up, and sure enough, it was this training, and I went through Coaches Training Institute. And I loved it. I loved, and first of all, going to work in the corporate arena and going out with friends and sharing. People would walk away going, "Can I give you my $10 copay?" Like, that was amazing. And I was like, what just happened? Right. So I was inspired by knowing that in telling the story, it helped others be inspired. And then when I became a coach, I was trying to become a coach while I was working in the corporate arena full time. It was really hard. And then I came on to Tony Robbins, and I'm like, oh, I need to do that. And so then I became a Tony Robbins coach for 7 years. And that helped me, learn how to coach people all over the world. And then since then, I've moved through a more of a spiritual connection and beyond just the practical tools of mindset to a deeper connection within. And I've gone to India, gotten meditation instructor. I have all these things, domestic violence. But what has taught me more than anything has been my journey of understanding that in the moments that it is the darkest, there is still always light. And my purpose now is to help people stop suffering, to stop defining themselves by the pain of the past and start to recognize the beautiful soul that got back up. Because if they're here and they're present, whatever happened to them, there's a beautiful child or whatever, woman or whatever, that got back up and still continue to live life and to be kind and to, and there's another resilient story that nobody is taught to witness. So my purpose is to help you see the unseen so that you never unsee it. And when you do that and you're able to be witness to your own divinity, you're just unshakable. There's nothing that can stop you from creating the dream, your life the way you want it, not by somebody else's dream, right? And so now I'm excited to be in this space of helping serve humanity. My outcome is to build an army of angels of other people that can help serve. And we can do it by starting being kind to the Starbucks lady or to the grocery store lady, right? Because you never know what kind of bombs are going off in their life.
Wow, what a story. You leave me speechless. I have no idea what to say, but because I read your story while I was doing research, but it's so different just coming from you. And it really hit me. I got really emotional. I couldn't imagine what was life, what was it like to be living in such a household, living with a, abusive father and husband, and just that despair of being in that space. I couldn't even imagine. Like now, when I think about my own problems that I'm going through right now, I was like, it's nothing, as compared to what you have went through. So thank you so much for sharing that story so beautifully.
Thank you.
And you actually said something that I really want to ask you, because you said if you don't look for the gift of your pain or trauma, you will only remember the pain. So my question is, how do we find the gift when we are still in the pain? Maybe people who are listening to this episode right now, they are still experiencing the trauma, they are still in the abusive relationship, and suffering much from it. So how do we find the gift? What is the first step?
Absolutely. It's such a great question. And I'll share this story. So when my older brother was murdered 29 years ago, I turned my back on God or any faith. And I was so angry. And I thought, if there is a God, how could you open the sky up and take my brother? Right? I was so furious. What I haven't shared is November, just a little over 3 months ago, my little brother was killed. And this was a different story. And because I've conditioned myself to look for the light in the darkness or the gift in the pain, right? I'm constantly looking because now that's my survival. I need to find the good, or I will not only remember the pain, but be in the pain, right? So as an example, I was witness to massive amounts of sorrow, right? So, it feels so like you don't want to believe that it's true. You think he's going to walk through the door, and and I felt all of that pain. And at the same time, noticed how my cousins showed up for me and how they were there for me and how it touches me even now, just to think of the unity that was created in a moment of sorrow. And that was beautiful. And I also noticed people that posted things on his Instagram about who he was to them and how he inspired them. And there's another flicker of light and another flicker of light. And so there's always light in the dark. I don't believe God wastes the pain. I believe we do if we choose to. And so we have to be active seekers of that gift. Maybe the gift is resilience. Like, when I was little, I used to build traps to warn me when my dad was coming into my room at night. Now I could look at that as a little girl and that how horrible that is, that she had to build traps to guard her from her father, which is true, but that makes me feel sad, right? Or there's another truth that I also was very creative with my traps. I was very resourceful, and it gave me courage to feel like I had some sense of control, even though it didn't always stop him, right? So there's that as well. There's a beautiful little girl that found resourcefulness, right? And so I start to think, if God could whisper in that moment to me as a little girl and say, Jessie, I know this really sucks right now, but if you knew what's coming, why I need you to build courage and resourcefulness and creativeness right now, you would understand. And I didn't know that at the breakup of my marriage, that I was going to need massive amounts of resilience and perseverance and courage to navigate a very, very angry divorce, right? And so again, there it is, right? There's this beautiful little girl that found courage, and there's this beautiful little girl that was getting abused. Both are true. One makes me sad and hurts me, and the other one allows me to fall in love with that aspect of me, that little girl that was courageous enough, right, to get creative and build traps. Like, so then I get to witness her without blame, because I used to blame myself. I used to be angry at myself. I used to think, why didn't you fight harder? You should have kicked, you should have screamed, you should have, spit on him, you should have done whatever. Like, because we grow up and we get smart and we're like, oh, you could have done this, right? I didn't know, I was a child, right? But we don't realize how we judge ourselves, right? And we start to beat ourselves up. And so if you're able to see the gift in the journey, even when you're in it, it might be a tender moment with your child. Sometimes when things were bad in the marriage, it brought me closer to my children, right? And we created a bond that is inseparable, right? And so there's that, right? So again, there's always light in the dark. You just have to find the light. And I say that with such conviction, because I just know it to be true. And I got to experience it yet again recently with my little brother's death. And I had to pull in all the tools, right? And really okay, God, if you mean to take both my brothers from me, where do you want me in this? How can I alchemize all of this pain into something beautiful? How could I take it and live my purpose with deeper conviction and resolve if I'm not meant to have my brothers? How could I take their lives and do something with it?
Wow, that's another beautiful story. Thank you so much for being vulnerable. And why do you believe that our path, because you talk about God a lot and faith, and you just mentioned that God don't waste our pain, only if we choose to, only if we choose to. So I remember seeing a line on your in your bio somewhere where you said you believe that our path is divinely written. Why do you believe that?
Well, because I believe that in our life, what if life was happening for us, not to us? Right? When you look at my history, you can say, wow, oh my God, you poor thing, right? Or like, I am in gratitude. Not that would I rewrite my story? Like, would I want a better relationship with my father? I'm like, I could think about it. I guess you would say, yeah, but then I think no, because I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be the Jessie that gets to show up here today and serve your clients, right? Or serve people that need help or need help out of suffering. I wouldn't understand shame at the level that I do. I wouldn't understand the moment where you want to take your own life the way I do, so that I can help bigger and better, right? So the divine choreography of your life is, I believe it's a contract I made before I got here that said, you know what? If I'm going to stand up and I'm going to serve humanity, then I need to understand the suffering humanity's in, right? It's like reading how to climb Mount Everest and actually climbing it are two totally different things, right? So I signed up for it. Somehow my soul signed up for this journey. And if I did, then I'm going to find the good in it. I'm going to find the gift, right? I think about people like John Walsh, who created America's Most Wanted, right? He created that from the pain of his 6-year-old kidnapping, right? Where they found him cut in pieces. Like that gut wrenching pain turned into stopping criminals, right? And so he took that pain and alchemized it into something beautiful. And the lady, I can't remember her name right now, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, right? Her 13-year-old daughter was hit so hard by a drunk driver that her body went hundreds of feet and her shoes still stayed in the exact same place. That's how hard she was hit. And because of that, from her pain, she created Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And so that's how I'm being witnessed. Like, how can, if God doesn't waste the pain, how can I take this pain and turn it into something purposeful?
Wow. Actually, I feel like you are the female version of Tony Robbins, since you work as one of Tony Robbins' coach. Because I
Thank
also
you.
attended training before, and I know his story. Listen, like 100 over times, and I still feel emotional every time you share his story. And I really, literally felt like I'm talking to a female version of Tony Robbins right now.
Well, thank
And
you for that.
grateful, yeah. And you mentioned, so I want to go back to what you said earlier in the very beginning. You said you actually, after you divorced your husband and you ended the marriage, and you read every single book that you could, went to every single webinar available and workshop just to understand human being.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to find out what created limitation in human being. So my question is, what did you discover? What did you find out? Because I want to know what truly created limitation in human being when human beings, when our potential, I would say, is truly limitless. But what created limitation?
It's an interesting question when you think about it. When we're born, we're not given a rule book, right? We are these beautiful, innocent children, right? We're pure, okay? And then we start to have experiences. We do something, our parent gets upset. We're like, oh, what's that? We go to kindergarten and somebody takes our lunchbox. We're like, why did they do that? Right? It's like, why don't they like me? I don't understand, right? You go home, your parent takes care of you, whatever. But now you go to school the next day a little bit more scared. And now you hold your lunchbox a little bit closer, right? And so we start to anchor not enoughness. Why don't they like me? It's an unconscious conditioning. It's just what we do as humans. We're meaning making machines. We make meaning out of what happens in our lifetime, and we don't even know it. We could have great parents, but that one kid at school was a bully, right? Or that teacher who said, you know what? Oh, if you have these grades, you're going to have a hard life. And that sticks in our mind and we don't realize it. So now we see life as hard. And so we don't know, like, it's just that unconscious conditioning. And then we try to get through life and then we wake up going, who am I? Right? And what do I believe? Are those my beliefs, or were they beliefs that were implanted in us throughout our journey? And so my outcome is to help unravel what it is that's creating limitation in you today. You might think, I already forgave my parents, or I already, and you could be highly successful. But if you're not living a limitless life, wide open and fulfilled, something is stopping you. It might be hidden in the unconscious conditioning you don't even remember. Right? A simple story too is a little boy who's at the grocery store and he's playing with toys in the aisle, and his mom goes to the end of the aisle to grab something. She can see him, but he can't see her. He lifts his head up, Mom, where he gets frightened. And she's like, I'm right here. But in that moment, he anchors abandonment. Oh, now next time they go to the grocery store, he's more clingy to mom, right? And he doesn't even know it, and mom doesn't know it, right? It's just, that's what happened. Now I'm a little nervous because that one moment that scared me and thought you left me, now tries to have relationships as a grown up, but he feels nobody ever stays around. They're going to leave me. And so he's always living hypervigilant, wondering why he has relationship problems, right? So those are the kind of things that happen that create limitation. I call it heart armor. We start to build armor around our hearts because when we were wide open and vulnerable and innocent like a child, things happen and we feel it got stomped on. So we start to build this protection, and then we show up as a version of ourselves, right? And we grow up and try to unpack all of that just to find that we were the divine perfection we were when we first took our first breath.
That is so true. So, what can you share with us what fierce grace means to you? And how do you use it in your work today? How do you use it with your clients?
For sure. Fierce grace to me is, if you think about the word fierce, I think there's a fierceness in each of us. And oftentimes we don't even know how powerful we are. It's hidden underneath that armor, right? Like I say, sometimes we don't know what we've got when our knees hit the floor, right? It's kind of like a stay-at-home mom that lifts a Volkswagen off a child, right? It's like she's got this hidden power, right? That the calling of her heart has her do the impossible, the unmentionable, right? It's just like if she thought about it, she'd like, oh, that car's too heavy. I can't help that child. But her heart calls her forward. She's not thinking, she does the impossible. There is a fierceness in our spirit that we just haven't recognized yet. And I want to help you reach it. In the moments where you're in the darkness or in the pain or whatever it is you're going through, you think that this is all you've got. You ever go to the gym and the person, you did the last push-up, you pushed yourself, you did 5 more than you thought you could, and you're like, I'm done. And then that personal trainer comes over and says, give me 5 more. And you're like, I can't, that's all I've got. He's like, give me 5 more. And then you do it. Right? There's a deeper resolve. There's another level to you. And then grace is being able to show up with that kind of certainty and that kind of power while sifting it through your heart and showing up with benevolence, being graceful and kind and being generous, right? And when you're able to flow between both of those energies, right? It's not one or the other. It's the balance of both. Right? So it's the masculine, feminine. It's the dark, it's the light, right? We have shadow sides and then we have a brilliant light. So how do you dance between those two to be your most powerful self? And that's what we get to discover, because it's not an or energy. It's not fierce or grace. It's and.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And when you're able to harness the power of both, you are literally unstoppable.
Yeah. So for people who are listening right now, they might be wondering, okay, what can I do right now? After listening to your story, we talk about mindset, we talk about belief, we talk about conditioning, we talk about self-worth, and we talk about trauma as well. For people who are listening, maybe what is the first step or the one action? Because Tony Robbins always says, don't leave a scene without making a decision or something like that. I can't remember the exact sentence, but similar to that. So what is something that you want my listener to do right now to start living a life with fierce grace, on their own terms?
Well, first of all, I have a 10-step guide that I'm going to offer to your audience as a free gift. So that'll help get them started. But what I would say is talk about what you're going through. Shame lives in secrecy. And sometimes we carry shame around, oh, our marriage isn't perfect, or I'm not the perfect mom, or whatever situation you feel that you're having a hard time with. Talk to someone, a friend. Nowadays, you have Facebook groups. Go find a Facebook. If you're living with a narcissist, find a narcissist. Like, speak about it. Get it out of you, because inside of you, it's stuck with the turmoil and the tornado of just day-to-day life, let alone your own limiting beliefs, right? And when you're able to speak on it and you're able to be witnessed and seen, you start to believe that there might be another pathway. Nowadays, there's way too much information out there. Now, some of it can be toxic and you start to feel like you go down a rabbit hole. However, if you reach out and you either get a mentor, a coach, a friend, someone, you are worth every breath. Like, speak to somebody. The worst thing you could do is keep it inside of you, because it just gets heavier and heavier and you start to decide that there's no way out. Remember, there is a deeper level of courage in you that you just haven't been witness to yet. So talk, speak on it, seek help, right? Don't stand alone. One of the most important things, you don't have to go it alone. And you have nothing to prove. Nothing to prove to anyone. Okay? You get to live your life unapologetically. And there is light on the other side of your discomfort, right? Sometimes change is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, right? Because it's pushing our edges. And that's okay. But what's on the other side is that much greater. So don't fear it. Let's feel the fear, but keep moving forward. I say fall in love with fear because that's an indicator that you must be up to something big, right? And it's also a call for courage. The minute fear is present, courage does not exist without the element of fear, right? So when fear shows up, just go, okay. And I would encourage everybody to get a courage journal. Just start to write down how many times you were courageous. Now, here's the key. Most of the time, we can't think of times we were courageous. So I'm going to invite you, think about the times you were scared, because I bet you remember those. But what you're not acknowledging is that when you had the fear and you still took action, you accessed courage. So when you start to document that over and over and over again, you're going to be witness to how courageous you are. And it'll give you the courage to make the first step to get out of whatever situation you're in that is causing limitation in your life.
Okay, so what if someone just doesn't know what to do? They are feeling lost or depressed or just directionless. They have no clue about who they are, why they are here, without a purpose. So how would you help someone who is feeling lost right now to find out their passion and purpose?
Yeah, again, I'm going to continue to say to be a seeker, pick up a book, you feed your mind, put something else in your mind than your own limiting thoughts, right? When you get into that state of depression, it's because you're replaying the limitation you're in, you're replaying the stuck feeling, you're replaying the abuse, you're replaying. So you got to feed your mind. Now we have Audible, put an audiobook in your ear, listen to other people's stories of success. That's why I say reach out, talk to somebody. But in absence of that, put a book in your ear, read a book, listen to a book, listen to podcasts, right? Like God bless you for freaking doing this, right? And giving people the opportunity to find joy in their life. So you get to hear this story. So there's a way out. So just, you have to own the belief first. If you believe there's no way out, you will create that in your reality. So whatever you want in your life, you must believe it first. Believe that it's possible. You're not the only one. You're not alone, and you don't have to be.
I love you just said that own the belief first. So how do we own a belief? How do we change the belief? Because it's so hard to change a belief, right? And I personally find it hard to change a belief. So how do we start to change or overcome our own limiting beliefs?
Well, what's interesting about that question is that when you think about a belief, right, it's not tangible, right? I can't touch it. It's just a thing that I repeat in my head. So who's in charge? Right? Right? So when you think about, like, is that belief serving me? I think that our life is in direct proportion to the quality of questions we ask ourselves. Okay. So if you ask a question, create doubt in the belief. Is that a belief that serves me? Right? So, it's like, is that a belief that gets me to where I want to go? Is that a belief that's for my highest and greatest good? Is that a belief that's for the highest and greatest good of others? Is that a belief that, no, well, shoot, then I don't like that belief. What belief do I want instead? And literally, you get to change it. What we don't recognize, especially when with specific cultures, like my family, there's a cultural, like, family, stick together, this whole thing. When your family, has some toxicity, you need to stick. It's like, well, no, if I'm being abused by my brother or my family member, why should I stay in the firing line of that person because they are considered family? Right? But it's just like, well, because they're family. And so then you deserve to be berated and verbally beat down or whatever other abuse because they're family, right? But we get this conditioning or beliefs. No, if you're this, then you have to follow these rules. Well, I want to know who wrote the rules, right? It's like nobody gets to be Joyan than Joyan. You are divinely made exactly the way you're meant to be. And nobody gets to drive your ship but you. So if that's the case, you got to own the belief that you are powerful and that you get to decide what beliefs serves you. And I ask those questions. Does this serve me? Does it serve others? Does it serve the greater good? If it's no to all three of those, then I'm tossing it. It doesn't serve me. Right. And Byron Katie, who wrote a great book called Loving What Is, she says, who would I be without that thought? Well, I would be happy. I wouldn't be so upset. I wouldn't be so stressed out. Well, good God, you're the owner of the thought. Get rid of it. Right? And it's important, to your point, Joyan, not just to get rid of the belief, but to create the belief you want instead, because you have had years of conditioning that belief. So it's going to want to keep defaulting to that belief until you create new neural pathways in your brain to believe the new one. So it's not enough just to change the belief. You have to create the new belief, and then you have to condition the new belief. And you might get people that say, what do you mean you don't believe that anymore? Come on, you're one of us. Like, what do you mean you're changing, right? And it gets hard because we're connection junkies. We don't want to disconnect from our friends, but I don't want to drink anymore. Let's just say that. I don't want to drink anymore. Well, what do you mean? Come on, you always toast with me, or you don't want a glass of wine with your girlfriend? What are you talking about? He's like, I just don't feel it serves me. I always feel like crap. It just, I want to grow, and I feel like it's dense, and I don't want it anymore. Oh, come on. And they give you a hard time, and you don't want to disconnect. So then you go back and you have a glass of wine. Right? And so it's super important for you to condition that new belief and say, look, I love you, and I don't mind if you have wine. I just don't want to. And it gets tricky, right? So you have to be the master. You're the master in chief of your body. You're the master in chief of your thoughts. I say, you wouldn't let somebody walk in your house with white carpet with muddy shoes, would you? Right? So why would you let a thought go into your brain that you don't give permission to? Right? I have a gatekeeper. I say, I have a gatekeeper. It's one of those guys in London with the big black hats. You can't make them smile, right? You try to do everything and they can't smile. Like that's the guy, the gatekeeper of my brain. Nothing gets past him that I don't give permission to, because I'm in charge of Jessie, this human being. I get to decide what belief systems serve me, and I get to pull out beliefs that were put in me when I didn't know better, when there was an unconscious conditioning, and I get to pull those out, and that's what we do.
But how do you do that exactly? Like, I don't know, like what kind of techniques do you use to help people condition the belief or create a new belief?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot woven in the program. I mean, we first have to start with acknowledging where you're at, right? Where was the belief created? Not, this isn't therapy, right? But we have to go where the meaning was made so that we can unravel it and see the different story. A big part of it is forgiveness. I think the only way to forgive, truly forgive, is to find gratitude for the thing that hurt you the most. And sometimes that's the hardest piece for people, right? It's just like, I think one of the hardest things is to forgive the person that never gave you the apology. And again, we don't forgive for them. We forgive for us, right? Because the consequences of unforgiveness are coping mechanisms like drinking or overeating or, pornography or, like that's how we cope. So we have to get to that place of forgiveness, and true forgiveness is finding gratitude in what happened. And I know for some people it sounds crazy because they're like, what do you mean? I was gang raped. How am I supposed to find gratitude around that? And I get it. And for what happened, I'm so sorry. However, if you're still alive and you're still here, then you're a functioning, beautiful human being that persevered. That there's something that experience gave you that allowed you to be this kind person today. And we're going to find what it actually created in you. It didn't kill you, but it woke up a different part of you that still gets to show up today. And that's what we're going to celebrate. And when you're able to witness it from those lenses, you could truly forgive. You forgive yourself for judging, and you forgive them for the incident, and you forgive the situation. And when you release that, it's like you just lost 20 pounds because you're literally releasing such a dense energy in your nervous system that it's been depleting you your whole life. So that's one of the processes, right? And now with that letting go and shedding all of that, now we get to create new patterns of behavior. And I have different tools and different things that I offer throughout the process, but it's not enough just to know. We have to condition.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm sure you are a real example, real life example of people who are going through trauma. You went through every single trauma that you could possibly imagine, right? And I'm sure a lot of people will be like, it's more convincing coming from you as someone who have walked the path as to someone as me. I personally went through depression, a suicidal depression. That's why I want to start my own podcast, because this is my purpose now. This is my joy now, to
Mm,
help people find happiness, because I wasn't happy.
yeah.
And this is why we do what we do today. And I just want to say thank you so much again for being here with us, sharing your story so beautifully. And before we move on to the final section of the episode, do you have anything that you really want to share, or you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you or didn't let you.
Well, the last thing I'd love to say, first of all, I want to say thank you to you. And like you found purpose, right, in your depression, right? You decided, you made a choice to choose joy. And now you're driven to help others. Like, see how beautiful that is? So you get to fall in love with the part of you that got depressed. Because without her, you wouldn't have this purpose, right? And so you get to fall in love with those aspects of you. But what I would tell your audience is you have to decide, just like you did, Joyan, you have to decide to either fuel your dreams or fuel all the reasons why you can't have it. Either way, you're right, but it's completely up to you. And trust that whatever limitation you believe is in your way right now, there is a way out. There just is. We just block ourselves because we think, well, where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? And what am I going to do? Like we start to get concerned in the how, and then we never take action. Set the goal. What do you want? When you decide and you have that kind of determination and you set a declaration, I will have the life that I deserve, the path will reveal itself. It can't happen until you make the decision first.
That is so true. Thank you so much. That is somehow what I need to hear today. Thank you so
Yay.
much. Remember what you want. Because I want to my listeners that we all have fears. We all have limiting beliefs. Everyone has it. We are never perfect, and personal development is not like a, it's not like you will get to a place where you are all done and perfect, and you're done with your life right now. You are all perfect. No, it's a journey. It's a process. We are always learning, growing, and evolving as human beings. So thank you so much for that. And we always end our episode with final five rapid fire questions. So every question has to be answered in either one word or one sentence maximum.
Okay.
All right, you're gonna love it. The first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
That the life of my dreams is possible.
Beautiful. Second question. Oh, I can't wait to hear this. If you could live your life all over again, what would you do differently?
Again, I don't know that I would do anything differently. If I had to choose something, I would say I would wait on my divorce till my sons graduated from high school. It was really hard on them. I still would have gotten divorced, but I would have waited till they graduated.
Wow. The third question is, what is something you're trying to learn or curious about right now?
Ooh, that's a big one. Um, Quantum barriers and living through quantum barriers and living through spirituality. Yeah.
What is quantum barriers?
It's a field of energy where I believe all our dreams lie, everything. We just have to be an energetic match, right? We have to vibrate at the level of receivership. I believe there is a field of energy where all of our dreams live. We just have to be a frequency match to it. We have to live it and experience it every day. And so I'm constantly curious about how our energetic bodies can be a match to what we want.
All right. The next question is, I think you kind of answered this question throughout the episode, but I'm going to ask it again. If you have 5 minutes and the whole world was listening to you, what would you say?
Oof. Come back to the innocence of a child. See the world through wonder. Fall in love with that child within because she's dying to come out. That innocence is the purity of our spirit, and there's nothing that can kill it. It's just hidden underneath our pain.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. The last question is, what brings you joy?
This, what brings me joy is the awakening of a human spirit, is seeing somebody be witness to their own divinity. And I say, when I see that look in their face, I'm like, isn't it yummy? Like, isn't it delicious in there? And they're like, yeah, right? It's like, I'll close with this. I told my daughter, she came home and she was having whatever, she was going through some stuff. And I'm just like, Shayna, you know what? Just be you. And she's like, oh, I hate when you say that, Mom. What does that mean? Right? And I'm like, just be you. And then she comes home one day and she says, Mom, I'm like, what? She goes, do you know what's great about being me? I go, what? She goes, I'm really good at it.
Wow.
Right? So you are an expert at being you. Just be you unapologetically. You don't have to answer to anybody, and you've got nothing to prove. We want you, uniquely you, because God made you the way you are on purpose.
Yes. I'm gonna interview your daughter. I'm just saying. Yeah, because the only person that you can be is you. You can't be anyone else but you, right? I love that. Where can I send people to you? Tell my listeners where they can find you online.
Yes, it's unshacablelife.com. Okay, you can come there. You'll see a masterclass. You can watch that and you can see if we're really a fit to work together. It would be my honor to connect with you. Then you can schedule a call with me. Unshakable with an E. Apparently you can spell it both ways. And also I'm offering a 3-day immersion with me in intensive healing. But that's for people, like, we have to have a conversation, because you have to be at that point where you're really ready to shed the old and enter what is beautifully, divinely waiting for you. So it's a 3-day immersion. And for that, you can go to healandgrowrich.org. And I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you to see if you're a fit. And it would be my honor to help you awaken, activate, and actualize the life of your dreams.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. When is the 3 days immersion?
We have a conversation and we choose the dates together.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. I hope you love this episode. I'm sure you love this episode. Go follow Jessie. Go to her website. Download the free guide that she mentioned earlier, the 10 steps guide to start living a fierce grace life. I'm sorry if I make it wrong, but I'm gonna put all the links in the channel below. So make sure you check it out. And if you want to learn more about what I do and connect with me, follow me on Instagram or visit my website, joyanchan.com. We release new episode every Wednesday. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thanks again to our sponsor, Get the Law of Attraction. Follow them on Instagram for daily spiritual enrichment and encouragement, especially if your spiritual ice cream cone is melting a bit. You will get a fresh scoop of your favorite flavor of spiritual encouragement and insights. Find Joy with Joyan listeners will get $25 off when you go to their website and use promo code Joyan, Joyan, when you sign up for their Law of Attraction course and gratitude journal. Once again, that is Joyan, Joyan, for $25 off, and their links are in the show note below. Thank you again for tuning to Find Joy with Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can help support this podcast in one of 3 ways. 1. Take a screenshot of this episode and share it on your IG story and tag me at findjoyjoyan_podcast so I can repost and connect with you. 2. Share this podcast with a friend or a family member. And 3. Leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to grow and reach more listeners worldwide. Make sure you also subscribe so you don't miss out on any episode coming Wednesday. Thanks for being here, and I will see you soon in the next episode.